All right. Again, this is another example of this hybrid thinking. It's a hybrid, you know, because I'm an asshole and I'm a savior at the same time. I'm both, and neither nor, and both and that's life. That's the human condition. That's also scientific wisdom of the hybrid way of thinking. I'm an electron and I'm a wave of energy, and I'm both and neither. And I'm the process of back and forth, and anyone who says he's one or the other has got to be some kind of a fool, one-sided nincompoop. All right. A person must use all his intelligence to fight these feelings of doom and gloom. And that's what I just said. So in other words, use both the deductions and the deductive side and the inductive side. We need to be very smart, not just half smart, not half vast, but totally vast. In our thinking and our wisdom, to fight the feelings of gloom, to feel that despair, there is no despair, and of course there is despair. So we need to take stock of both sides, but with the wisdom of Maimonides' guide, we can say that what makes a person truly a human is to have the balance, the overall balance, tip on the side of induction, intuition, and awareness, and imagination. And with that ultimate wisdom, then a person can be, and assuming you've integrated the two sides properly, then you could think prophetically, or with wisdom, or authentically, and you're using all your intelligence. And again, NACHMAN says, one must be very firm and always practice this teaching of azamra. Maimonides says, prophet needs to be courageous. It's one of the properties of a prophet. And being courageous, and here it fits into the idea of having the courage to use your intelligence intelligently, even in dumb situations which cry out for stupidity. And if you allow yourself if I allow myself to be strong and resist that temptation to be stupid, then and be very firm about that. Okay, and NACHMAN. What's his name? Maimonides says he wants to deal with one intelligent, serious student rather than 10,000 fools. So we're constantly faced with 10,000 fools in our lives, and it takes a little bit of courage and firmness, a lot of courage and firmness to maintain one's integrity.
There was a Jewish farmer who had 3 sons. One day, everyone noticed that the milk of one of the goats was exceptionally delicious. So the youngest brother decided to observe where the goat was grazing. He learned that the goat disappeared each day into a cave and only returned just as the sun was about to set, when it was time for all the animals to come back to the farmhouse. Though he thought he had explored every inch of the farm, he had never seen that cave before. He was very curious, so the next day he followed the goat back to the cave. This time he carried a torch, and when he entered the cave, he could hear the bells of the goat echoing throughout the cave. On the first turn, he came into a small cavern and saw, much to his surprise, that a pulpit had been set up, and there was a man standing before it who was reading the Talmud by the light of a torch. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" he asked the man. "I come here to study where nobody can disturb me. Indeed, this is the first time that anyone else has come here while I am studying. But perhaps you have come just in time, for I have been troubled greatly by a problem in the Talmud." For a moment the young man wrestled with himself. Already the tinkling of the goat's bells was barely audible. Now the youngest son was the brightest boy in his yeshiva, and many were the hours he had enjoyed weighing one matter or another. So he gladly offered to discuss the point of law. At that moment the sound of the bells disappeared. Also the scholar, his pulpit, and the entire cave vanished. And the young man found himself in the middle of a field. The cave was nowhere to be seen. He returned home confused about all that had taken place. When he told his brothers about it, the second brother offered to follow the goat. And so the next day, the second brother took a torch with him, and when he saw the goat run into the entrance of a cave, he followed it. He too saw the scholar standing at his pulpit studying the Talmud. Yes, it was quite intriguing. But despite his love of Torah learning, the young man was no fool. He remembered what had happened to his brother and decided to continue following the goat, whose bells still echoed. So it was that the second brother turned the passage and found another small cavern. There he saw something gleaming in the half-light. Coming closer, he saw a pile of golden coins. He could barely believe his luck. He bent down and scooped up a handful of coins. But the moment he touched them, the golden coins disappeared, along with the entire cave. The second brother, just as had the first, found himself back in the field, and there was no sign of the cave anywhere. This brother too returned in confusion and told the others all that had happened to him. When he heard of these strange occurrences, the oldest brother decided that he also would follow the goat to see if he could learn any more about that mysterious cave. And so it was that the goat led the oldest brother to the cave. He too encountered the scholar. Though he was an excellent student in the yeshiva, he resisted the temptation to enter into the scholar's deliberations. Then he saw the gold piled in the next cavern. He leaned over to glance at it, but lest he be tempted to touch the gold, he hurried after the sound of the goat's bells. Already the sound of the bells was growing faint. In this way he was led through a third turning of the cave and found himself in yet another cavern. Here he saw something amazing. There was someone sleeping in the cave. He saw that it was a beautiful woman curled up on the floor. And when he came closer, the woman's eyes opened and she sat up. He saw that she was naked. Her eyes, filled with desire, looked into his own, and he returned her lascivious gaze. Without saying a single word, he was about to embrace her when suddenly he heard the faint tinkle of the bells. He stopped himself abruptly. After a painful moment of turmoil, he took one last look into her eyes, politely said goodbye to her, and hurried off after the goat. At last, the oldest son reached the other end of the cave. And as soon as he stepped out of the cave, he found himself in a beautiful orchard. Trees with an abundance of fruit were to be seen everywhere, and wandering streams filled with fish. He knew at once that he had reached the land of his dreams, a land of milk and honey. And he understood that the goat had grazed on these sweet grasses, and that is why its milk was so delicious. Now the young man wanted to return through the cave to bring his family with him, but when he looked for the cave, he could not find it, for it had disappeared. And so he took the goat with him and made a new life for himself, and he is still living there to this day.